Welcome to Black Bodies, Bold Pleasures. I'm Candace Cherry, and I'm excited to guide you through this exploration of Black sexuality, its rich history, profound impact, and undeniable power. In this video, we'll dive into the first part where we uncover the historical narratives that have been shaping Black sensuality in the United States and how they continue to influence us today. Please note that the second part of this presentation, which focuses on empowerment and celebration, will not be included in this recording. So while you're here, take this opportunity to absorb the history and know that the invitation to reclaim, tap in, and celebrate will be waiting for you in the next step of this journey. Let's dive in. Trigger warning. What we're about to discuss involve themes of sexual violence, purity culture, and the ways Black bodies have been controlled in this country. This conversation is necessary, but it may bring up emotions, memories, or discomfort. If at any point you need to pause and step away, take a break, or simply hold space for yourself, please do. This is a space of care, not harm. What comes to mind when you think of Black sexuality? These are our chains. We have been taught for centuries that Black bodies, our bodies, don't fully belong to us. Starting at slavery, because this is where it all began, our ancestors were not just enslaved. Their bodies were labeled and assigned roles. Jezebel, a stereotype that pushed the narrative that Black women were naturally promiscuous, insatiable, and seductive. These women were asking for it. This justified rape, violence, and the erasure of consent. Sati, also called Sarah Baartman, was known as the Hottentot Venus. She was born in South Africa around 1770 to the Khoikhoi people. Enslaved as a young woman, she was taken to Europe with the promise of wealth and new opportunities. Instead, she was kept in a cage and displayed in a freak show across London and Paris, where she was poked, prodded, and gawked at by white audiences. Her exotic features, a curvier body and large butt, was said to be proof to the European scientists that Black people were inferior. A field called scientific racism emerged, whose sole purpose was to justify racial hierarchy. This proved that Blacks were primitive. By 1815, she died. Her body was violated and dissected for scientific reasons. Her skeleton was housed at a museum in Paris, while her brain and genitals were preserved in jars. A cast of her naked body was on display until 1974. In 2002, with the help of Nelson Mandela, her body was returned to South Africa for burial. For Black men, it was the belief that they were hypersexual, aggressive, and a threat to the delicate sensibilities of white women. This fueled lynchings and criminal acts such as the killing of Emmett Till. Buck-breaking was one of the most horrific and dehumanizing forms of punishment and control used during slavery. On plantations, bucks who refused to submit were publicly humiliated. They were beaten and often sexually assaulted by their owners, overseers, or groups of other enslaved men who were forced to participate. It was done publicly as a form of psychological warfare. White men from other towns would gather to participate and considered this entertainment. The goal was to completely strip these men of their masculinity, dignity, and power. It ensured that others learned the consequences of defying authority. It also warned the enslaved women and children that no one was safe and that these men can't protect them. The sapphire stereotype, the angry Black woman who doesn't need a man, who's too dominant, too loud, too much, robbed Black women of their vulnerability, while the mammy trope had no sexuality at all. This taught us that being soft, being sensual, and being pleasured wasn't for us. These labels weren't just about sex. They were about power. If they can control how we saw ourselves, they could control everything. Slavery may have planted the seed of this uninformed thinking, but the church, it watered it. Now, don't get me wrong, I know faith is a cornerstone for many of us in this community. But let's think for a moment about how Christianity was given to us. It wasn't about saving our souls. It was about controlling our minds and our bodies. We were told that sex was dirty, that pleasure was sinful, that our bodies were shameful unless they were covered up and given to the right kind of person in the right kind of way. Black women were told to be virtuous, to keep their legs closed, because anything else made you a Jezebel. Black men were told to suppress their desires, and if they didn't, then they were a beast. And queer folks just, they just weren't supposed to exist. Think about it. Why is pleasure a sin when we feel it in our own bodies? Why is it wrong when it brings us joy? Who benefits from us feeling ashamed of something that is literally our birthright? Purity culture told us that our worth was tied to our virginity, that a woman's value was in her ability to remain untouched. And what did that do to us? It created a world where sexual violence wasn't just common, it was silenced. What happens when you teach a girl that her body is a prize to be won? When you tell her that virginity is what makes her worthy? You create a society where if it's taken by force, by coercion, or by manipulation, she no longer believes she has value. And if she speaks up, the church, the community, and sometimes her own family asks, "What were you wearing? Were you alone with him? And did you tempt him?" It creates a space where women are always on the defense, and men aren't held accountable for their bad behavior. So let me be clear. Your body was never meant to be a battlefield. Your pleasure was never meant to be a sin. And your worth should have never been defined by what someone else did to you. After slavery and into the Jim Crow era, after every system of oppression tried to break us, there was the idea that the only way to survive was for Black people to be good, to be proper, to be acceptable to the dominant culture. That meant to dress modestly, speak correctly, keep your head down and your skirts long. This often meant suppressing expression of identity, sexuality, and autonomy in order to fit into the standards created by white supremacy and patriarchy. No amount of respectability has ever stopped racism or oppression. Modern-day media continues to reinforce and reshape these narratives. Music videos, TV shows, films, and social media depicting Black sexuality is still heavily influenced by racist, sexist, and homophobic tropes. Black men and Black women are often hypersexualized, depicting them as overly sexual, animalistic, and insatiable. Black women are lustful, aggressive, and not looking for love. They're either hyper glamorous sex symbols or the struggling single mom. Black men are often seen as sexually dominant and considered a threat. Think crime dramas, sports culture, and interracial dating narratives. This mirrors slavery-era stereotypes and continues to justify the exploitation of the Black body. On the flip side, some media erases Black sexuality altogether. Think the dark-skinned Black woman who is often casted as the best friend, never the lead, or the strong mother. Black queer or trans folks are often treated as caricatures, and the Black man in a professional role is often stripped of his sexuality to make him palatable to the masses. Even today, Black artists, actors, and influencers face backlash when they embrace their sexuality openly. Megan Thee Stallion and Cardi B are constantly criticized for owning their sexuality, while white artists such as Madonna and Sabrina Carpenter are considered empowering. Lizzo faces fat phobia and respectability politics for being openly sensual and confident. Lil Nas X has his queerness and sensuality attacked in ways that white queer artists like Sam Smith rarely experiences. When Black people embrace their sexuality publicly, the pushback is so loud because it disrupts the narratives that society has been trying to impose. For far too long, Black sexuality has been tangled up in violence, shame, guilt, and fear. Our bodies have been taken, used, labeled, and abused while we were denied the right to define ourselves. In this presentation, we named the chains so we can break them. We are reclaiming what has always been ours: our body, our pleasure, our power. As we wrap up this exploration, take a moment to check in with yourself. If anything in this presentation stirred up tension or anxiety, let's release it together. Take a deep breath in, and on the exhale, let go of any lingering energy. Now I invite you to shake your body, letting it move freely, releasing anything that doesn't serve you. Remember, this is just the beginning of your journey. Reclaim your pleasure, tap into your power, and celebrate your sensuality. Thank you for being here.